The rehearsal footage wasn't acting. 15 films with behind-the-scenes moments too real to ignore. We've all admired the intensity of great action scenes. The clenched fists, the crashing debris, the breathless moments right before the punch lands. It's choreography until it isn't. Because sometimes the blood on screen doesn't wash off. And sometimes the screaming doesn't stop when the director yells, "Cut!" There's a thin line between rehearsal and reality. And in some films, that line wasn't just blurred, it was obliterated. Stunt performers walked off set with broken bones. Actors collapsed from real fear. Crew members stood silent as the cameras kept rolling because the footage was too powerful, too visceral, too real to ignore. In these moments, cinema ceased to be illusion. What ended up on screen were unscripted accidents, uncontrolled chaos, and emotional breakdowns that no one planned but everyone chose to keep. Because somewhere between method acting and reckless filmmaking, someone decided that truth, no matter how dangerous, was the ultimate special effect. These are not stories of carefully constructed chaos. They are the hidden bruises beneath the costume, the oxygen tanks just out of frame, the unscheduled ambulance rides between takes, and the eerie silence that follows when the crew realizes that wasn't acting. White? Let's dive into 15 action films where the behind-the-scenes moments were more dangerous, more emotional, and more unforgettable than the scenes themselves. Fact has shown. Deadly Prey, 1987. When a stuntman didn't get up, it was meant to be a brutally realistic hand-to-hand fight. The kind of scene that sells a movie like Deadly Prey. Raw, low-budget action with teeth. But when one of the stuntmen failed to rise after a particularly vicious takedown, the cameras kept rolling, unsure if it was the performance of a lifetime or something else. Shot in just weeks and with a crew that lived on caffeine and chaos, Deadly Prey became a cult favorite not because of its polish, but because of its primal aggression. During one fight sequence deep in the woods, the choreography went out the window. A mistimed punch turned into a real elbow to the temple, and a fall landed harder than planned on bare dirt, no pads. The impact knocked the stuntman cold. What's disturbing is how long it took anyone to notice. The actor stayed in character. The director loved the intensity. And only after several seconds of silence unnatural, even for this blood-soaked shoot, did someone call for help. The footage? Still in the movie. It was too good to cut. No one sued, no one talked, and the crew moved on like nothing happened. But for those watching closely, there's a moment when the camera lingers just a bit too long. When motion stops, but the dread starts. And it wouldn't be the last time a scene turned into something unplanned. Fact #2. The Octagon 1980. Chuck Norris didn't want a double. When Chuck Norris signed on for the Octagon, he wanted to showcase real martial arts, not Hollywood versions. So when a dangerous leap over jagged rocks came up in the shooting schedule, Norris refused a stunt double. "I'll do it myself," he reportedly said. "It'll look better that way." And he did. Except it didn't look better, it looked real. Because it was. The jump wasn't rehearsed to completion. The landing zone was uneven, and the crew had limited time to reset. Norris leapt, clipped his leg on a boulder, and slammed down hard. Cameras caught the wince, the grunt, the slow push back to his feet. It looked like acting, but it was pain. Rather than scrap the scene, the director leaned into it. The stumble added vulnerability. The cut stayed. Norris insisted on finishing the day's work, his limp growing with each take. Decades later, fans praise the raw edge of the Octagon's action. Few realize that one of its most authentic moments came from a miscalculation, one the star was too proud to back down from. The scene remained. The scar did too. But Norris wasn't the only actor who risked everything for realism. Fact #3. Navy SEALs 1990. When the water didn't let go. There's a moment in Navy SEALs where the camera follows the team into a murky underwater breach. What viewers didn't know was that the panic in one actor's eyes wasn't rehearsed. It was real. The scene called for a nighttime underwater insertion, tight gear, limited vision, and freezing water. But one of the suits was defective. A valve jammed. As the actor descended, his oxygen cut off. The safety diver, out of position, didn't notice in time. The actor, unnamed in official records, signaled distress, but the shot was so chaotic, the crew thought it was part of the act. It wasn't until he began violently kicking for the surface that someone screamed to stop the shoot. He survived. Barely. An hour later, drenched and shaking, he demanded to continue filming. The footage of his genuine struggle, parts of it were used in the final cut. It looked too real, one editor admitted, because it was. Years later, the director still won't talk about it. Insurance reports were sealed. But the rumor persists. That scene was supposed to be 2 takes. They only needed 1. And the next film would prove that dry land wasn't any safer. Fact #4. The Hero and the Terror, 1988. The set that suffocated the cast. In The Hero and the Terror, Chuck Norris plays a cop confronting trauma inside a derelict theater. The final act takes place in a dark, abandoned opera house, a setting that felt eerie even before the cameras rolled. But what happened during filming made the fear on screen feel suffocatingly real. The production found a real, long-condemned theater in Los Angeles, shut for decades. It had no ventilation, no running power, and definitely no safety inspections. The crew brought in portable lights and oxygen tanks just in case. Then came the long tracking shot, Norris chasing the villain through multiple levels of the crumbling building. Midway through, one actor collapsed. Another began coughing uncontrollably. A third staggered offset, pale and gasping. Carbon monoxide from the generators had slowly filled the lower levels. But they got the shot. Rather than halt production, the director simply revised the schedule, shorter takes, fewer people in confined spaces. No formal report was filed. The studio feared liability. The scene was intense, claustrophobic, unsettling. Test audiences loved it. What they didn't know was that the terror wasn't acting, it was hypoxia. And the villain wasn't on screen. It was in the air. Yet even that wasn't the most dangerous confined set of the decade. Fact #5. Silent Running, 1972. When the explosion wasn't staged. Long before CGI made space stories safe, Silent Running relied on real sets, real props, and real pyrotechnics. Shot aboard a decommissioned aircraft carrier, the film's low budget meant every explosion had to count. Unfortunately, one of them almost did more damage than planned. During a scene where Bruce Dern's character sabotages equipment in protest, a small explosive charge was set to simulate an engine overload. The crew positioned themselves safely behind barriers. But one camera operator, eager to capture a better angle, moved half a step closer. The blast came early. Shrapnel real metal, not breakaway, shot across the floor. One technician suffered a deep gash to the arm. The camera operator's gear was shredded. The operator himself was thrown back, unconscious. And yet, the shot? It was breathtaking. The studio reviewed the footage. Editors gasped. The scene stayed. Insurance covered the medical bills. But no one was fired. The director simply said, "It looked too real to reshoot." In the final film, there's a frame, just one, where you can see the shadow of a crew member ducking. That wasn't planned. But it was real. And it wouldn't be the last time authenticity drew blood. Fact #6. Bulletproof, 1988. The gun didn't fire blanks. It was supposed to be routine, a high-speed shootout scene with blanks, squibs, and the usual pyrotechnic choreography. But on the set of Bulletproof, one prop gun turned out to be anything but harmless. The scene involved a standoff between the lead and a minor villain. The actor playing the villain had trained for the timing raise, fire, drop. But when he pulled the trigger, a shell casing ejected with abnormal force, striking a crew member just outside the frame in the face. That shouldn't have happened. The prop master rushed in. Upon inspection, it was discovered that one of the guns had been loaded with a malfunctioning blank containing fragments that weren't cleared. A few more degrees, and the result could have been fatal. The production shut down for half a day. No police report, no news leak. The scene was reshot, except not entirely. The original take, with the actor's visible panic and the camera's slight jolt, made it into the final cut. It gave the scene an edge no one could fake. And no one wanted to talk about it again. Because in Bulletproof, it wasn't the script that caused the most damage. It was trust in a cold piece of steel. But one director would take that same trust and push it even further. #7, Cyborg, 1989. The director who didn't call cut. Albert Pyun was known for working fast, cheap, and dangerous. With Cyborg, he had a vision of post-apocalyptic brutality and a lead actor, Jean-Claude Van Damme, who was eager to prove himself. What neither anticipated was a moment so raw, so unscripted, that it caused one of the stuntmen to leave the set permanently. The scene was a chaotic melee in a flooded alley, blades, fists, bodies in motion. One stunt performer had choreographed a spinning kick sequence with Van Damme. But during the take, the water-soaked ground shifted. Van Damme over-rotated. His heel struck the stuntman's temple with full force. He went down, hard, eyes unfocused, breathing shallow. But Pyun didn't yell cut. Instead, he let the scene continue. Another actor stepped in, improvising an attack. Van Damme, unsure whether it was a real fight or not, responded in kind. The camera caught it all fluid, frenzied, terrifying. Only when the stuntman failed to get up did the crew intervene. He recovered eventually, but he never returned to set. And the director? He used parts of that footage in the final cut. It was ugly, he said later, but it was honest. Honest or reckless. The film got its shot. The performer got a scar. And 1 year later, another actor would experience something even worse on live film. #height. Split second. 1992. The flood was real. Set in a near-future London submerged by climate catastrophe, Split Second was a low-budget sci-fi action film starring Rutger Hauer. Its dingy, flooded sets weren't created on sound stages. They were shot in actual underground structures filled with standing water, rats, and decay. For a pivotal chase sequence, the crew filled an old meatpacking facility with ankle-deep water. The power systems were rigged across overhead beams, barely passing safety standards. No one expected what would happen next. A short circuit, caused by exposed wiring and rising water levels, triggered a localized electrical discharge just feet from the cast. One crew member was knocked unconscious. Others felt burning sensations in their limbs. Shooting paused. Temporarily. Rather than abandon the location, the producers doubled down. More rubber mats, fewer crew per take, tighter scheduling. Hauer, famously fearless, continued despite the risks. "That's the character," he reportedly muttered. "He's already dying anyway." The final scene shows Hauer running through flickering lights and sparking wires. The fear on his face? Entirely real, because there was no second take. And it set the stage for yet another production that mistook danger for atmosphere. #9, Rolling Thunder 1977. The blood didn't wash off. A revenge thriller known for its slow burn rage, Rolling Thunder is often remembered for its haunting ending. But one of the most chilling moments didn't come from the script. It came from a rehearsal gone wrong that made it into the shoot. William Devane's character is tortured using a garbage disposal in one harrowing scene. The original plan was to simulate the device with sound design and close angles, but the practical effects team wanted something more visceral. They brought in a custom-built prop rig, complete with fake bloodlines and a rotating mechanism. What they didn't anticipate was a pressure leak. During the rehearsal, one of the prop's tubes burst unexpectedly, spraying real fake blood and some sharp plastic debris directly into Devane's face. He screamed, not in character, in pain. The cameras kept rolling. His expression contorted, wild, unfiltered was so intense, the director insisted on keeping the take. The swelling around his eye? It's visible in the next two scenes. Production simply shot around it. Years later, Devane joked that the garbage disposal was more committed to the role than anyone else on set. And if that sounds extreme, just wait until you hear what happened when a director filmed a stunt and never told the actor it was real. Fact Hajon 0. Eye of the Tiger. 1986. The explosion that wasn't cleared. Eye of the Tiger promised grit and vengeance. But during one climactic explosion, what the cameras captured wasn't part of the plan and nearly ended the production. The script called for a truck to explode in an open desert road. The pyrotechnics team rigged the vehicle with timed charges and placed fire-suppressing blankets around the camera zone. The lead actor, Gary Busey, was to run from the vehicle as it erupted in flames. What no one accounted for: a fuel leak. Moments before the detonation, gasoline pooled beneath the truck. The heat from the rig's ignition source was enough to trigger a premature blast. Busey had already started his sprint, but the fireball came sooner, larger, and far hotter than planned. The shockwave knocked him forward. The director screamed not for drama, but because they didn't know if he was alive. Busey rolled, coughed, and amazingly stood up, dazed but intact. They didn't call for a second take. The footage? Used in the final cut. The raw panic on Busey's face gave the scene a brutal authenticity. Years later, the stunt coordinator admitted, "That was the closest we've ever come to filming a death. And it wouldn't be the last time an actor's life depended on split-second luck." Fact Hajon 1. The Dogs of War. 1980. The gun jammed, and so did the actor. During a tense rebel ambush scene in The Dogs of War, Christopher Walken's character fires a machine gun at approaching enemies. What most viewers don't realize is that the jammed gun, the fury, and the explosion of frustration in his eyes weren't scripted. The prop gun, a heavily modified M60, was designed to simulate rapid fire without real ammunition. But midway through the take, the mechanism stuck. Walken, still in character, slammed it against a barricade and began yelling at the crew, thinking they had ruined the shot. But the director didn't cut. Instead, the cameraman slowly zoomed in, capturing every twitch, every vein bulging on Walken's forehead. The tension bled off the screen. What had begun as a routine action sequence became a seething character moment, one that made it into the final version unaltered. Walken later admitted he wasn't acting. "I thought someone was going to get hurt if they didn't fix it." The rage was real. The sweat, the spit, the shattered prop, all real. And when the gun finally worked, he fired it like he meant it. But in another production, a malfunction didn't just create tension, it nearly ended someone's career. Fact Hajon 2. The Hit List 1993. The slap that went too far. Low-budget action films often blur the line between method and madness. But in The Hit List, that line vanished completely during one infamous scene involving a slap that never should have landed. The antagonist, played by Lance Henriksen, was supposed to intimidate a hostage by faking a backhanded blow. The actor opposite him, an uncredited performer, was told the strike would miss by a few inches. Henriksen, deep in character, misjudged the distance. The slap landed. Hard. So hard, in fact, that the actor's lips split on impact and he fell out of frame. Everyone froze except Henriksen, who stepped over the dazed man and delivered his next line without blinking. It wasn't until the director called "cut" that anyone checked on the actor. He was conscious, furious, and bleeding. The take? It stayed. Years later, Henriksen claimed he didn't realize what happened until he saw the playback. It looked brutal, he said. Because it was. And it wouldn't be the last time a physical improvisation crossed the line from convincing to violent. Fact has shown 3. Extreme Prejudice, 1987. The knife wasn't rubber. In one of Extreme Prejudice's most intense standoffs, a knife glints under a single spotlight. It's fast, it's close, and it's visceral. What the audience didn't know, the blade wasn't a prop during rehearsal and someone bled for it. The actor playing the assassin insisted on realism. For early takes, he used a dulled but real blade to get the weight and movement right. The choreography was tight, but the angle of one parry shifted by inches. In a moment of tension, the knife slipped, catching co-star Michael Ironside just below the rib cage. Not a deep cut, but a real one. Ironside broke character for half a breath, then kept going. His shirt soaked up the blood, and the take was completed. The pain in his grimace? Unmistakable. Afterwards, the crew panicked. The knife was pulled. The actor was benched for the day. But the director reviewed the footage and found something honest. They used it. The injury was dressed off camera. The blood stayed in the edit. In Extreme Prejudice, the title wasn't just metaphor. It was written in red beneath the surface. And the next production would blur the line between breakdown and breakthrough. Fact has shown 4. Dead Bang 1989. The breakdown was real. Don Johnson's performance in Dead Bang is often praised for its rawness. But one scene, his character confronting a white supremacist suspect, feels charged beyond acting. That's because the emotional explosion wasn't scripted. It was a breakdown. Filmed at the end of a grueling shoot, the scene called for Johnson to shout through a steel door and kick it in frustration. But the actor had reached a breaking point fueled by exhaustion, personal loss, and a week of reshoots. He kicked the door harder than expected, screamed louder than rehearsed, then punched the wall beside it. Blood spattered his sleeve. The camera kept rolling. Everyone thought it was a brilliant take. No one realized Johnson wasn't performing. He was unraveling. The scene stayed, almost untouched. Only later did the director admit they never got him to repeat it. "We couldn't," he said. "Whatever that was, it was lightning. There's no stunt, no weapon, no fireball in that shot. Just a man boiling over, and a crew too stunned to intervene." And in the final fact, a director wouldn't wait for emotion to arrive. He'd manufacture it, without warning. Fact has shown 5. Stone Cold 1991. The director set the scene but didn't warn the actor. In Stone Cold, a biker gang raid culminates in a moment of raw panic when a character is ambushed mid-monologue. It looks like perfect timing, shock, chaos, confusion. That's because the actor didn't know it was going to happen. Director Craig R. Baxley was known for pushing limits. For one key scene, he told the crew to prep a surprise explosive charge just outside the actor's line of sight. He instructed them, "Do not tell him, I want real panic." They got it. As the actor delivered his lines, the blast ripped through the set wall behind him, showering him in dust, heat, and plaster. He screamed, dropped to the floor, looked off camera in disbelief. It wasn't acting. The crew clapped. The director grinned. The take was printed. The actor, furious, stormed off set and refused to speak for the rest of the day. But when he saw the footage later, he admitted it was perfect. The ethics of that choice remain debatable, but the impact? Unforgettable. In Stone Cold, the danger wasn't written in the script. It was written in the silence between action and reaction. Bonus fact: Shoot Fighter. Fight to the death. 1993. The camera kept rolling, because no one realized he was actually hurt. This one didn't make the top 15, but it might just be the strangest of all. During a brutal fight sequence in Shoot Fighter, Fight to the Death, one actor took a scripted fall face first into a pile of broken boards and debris. It was designed for maximum flair, minimal risk. But one of the planks hadn't been properly rigged. Buried beneath the splinters was a rusted nail. The actor's shoulder caught it mid-fall, ripping through his costume and piercing the skin. He grimaced, clenched his jaw, and kept going. The scene required a slow crawl, a look of agony, a desperate gasp for air. And what he delivered was so convincing, the director whispered, "That's it. That's the pain I wanted." Except it wasn't performance. He was bleeding into the sand. When cut was finally called, he collapsed. Crew members rushed in. A medic was summoned. The nail had punctured dangerously close to an artery. He was hospitalized that night, but the scene stayed. The blood in that take? Not fake. The dirt? Soaked. The audience never knew. To this day, the actor hasn't named the crew member who missed the rigging. "What's the point?" he said. The shot worked. In the end, Shoot Fighter was billed as fiction. But in that moment, it became documentary. Because the camera doesn't care if it's acting or agony. They called it acting. But the bruises, the burns, and the blood said otherwise. Some moments were accidents. Others were choices. And somewhere in between, the line blurred between performance and punishment, between immersion and exploitation. So here's the question. Which scene felt too real to ignore? And more importantly, when does dedication cross the line into danger? Tell us what you saw, and what you think should have never been left in.